Welcome back, Rage Nation. Got myself Pete here.
That's not really exciting.
You got Senior Dixon.
I don't think that's appropriate.
And you got Monsieur Leopard.
Explorers deserved it. No.
Absolutely.
I was disgusted. I cannot believe they've done this.
Why is wacky? Why is not good? It's just nonsense.
I disagree on that. That's not possible.
We're getting the band back together. We're on a mission. Yeah.
Now we've got a whole new list of things to complain about.
Welcome back, Rage Nation. We are at it again. Got myself Pete here. And yeah, happy Malifourth to everybody. It's the world we're going to be living in for the foreseeable half decade. So I got a couple of friends to come on and talk about it, because there's some people that are loving it, some people that think the world's burning and the sky is crumbling, and we're gonna find some kind of balance in between all of that, or not. So I got Jim and Trevor on with us. Gentlemen, how you doing?
Hello. Doing well, sir. How are you?
Doing well. I'm doing fantastic. I mean, I have been a part of a lot of edition changes in my day, so I'm here for it. You gotta be open and just be like, you want to know, my body's ready, but my wallet is not.
I have a few more gray hairs this morning than I did yesterday, I think. So
I will say some of the stuff they released today, we're gonna get into, and some of it I had to sit back for a second and be like, whoa, that's a different thing. We might have Dixon joining us. Puerto Rico apparently has some kind of island power outage, so he might not. Depends if the generator is going to fire up or not. But before we get into that, make sure that you guys are checking us out. You can do that by going on to our Discord channel, which has been hot. I have had many people tell me that they have had to mute Discords because they are fired up with all sorts of comments and commentary and releases and lots of information. So yeah, definitely check that out for the channel. You can also support us directly at patreon.com/RageQuitWire, where you can get stuff early. You get content that other people don't get. And then if you want to buy stuff directly from Wyrd on the Easter sale, definitely use our affiliate link. It is in the show notes. And I know a lot of people aren't buying a ton of stuff, and that makes sense with the edition change. Most of the people I've seen buying stuff, it's been like, I'm buying this alternate box, and I'm buying these cards and terrain, and that makes perfect sense. If you're going to do that, though, use our code. So I think, Jim, you made a good way to kind of open this up for this episode, and just let's get a vibe check of how is everybody doing? How close are you to the edge? How you feeling so far? Gonna start with you, Jim. How you feeling so far about everything as of it is Wednesday the 16th at 8 p.m. How are you feeling about the news that Wyrd has so far released?
feeling pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoy what I've been reading so far. I think I'm most excited for the schemes. The way they're describing it, it looks... So, I cut my teeth in 2nd edition. In 2nd edition, schemes were fairly dynamic, and you could do things like announce schemes and get more points. So you could like get 2 points at one moment. And having these bonus points available to schemes, I'm just really excited to see how figuring out the lines of play are going to be. Like maybe, figuring out going from scheme A to scheme B to scheme C is really good for this master. But if I have to pick a different master, I can go scheme A to scheme D to scheme Z.
Yeah, right? Whatever.
That's exciting to me.
All right. Well, Trevor, how about you? What's your vibe check? I think it's been a little different for you. So go ahead and it's a safe space, as the kids say.
I'm trying not freak out here. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to
freak out over here, man.
We gotta keep our composure. That's what I feel like right now is Will Ferrell in old school. No,
Or
so
Will
there.
Ferrell and Anchorman in the phone booth. I'm in a glass box of emotion.
Yes, exactly. Um, there are some things that I am jazzed about for sure, like the simplification of terrain, the schemes, and just some general things that they did there or talked about in the nitty gritty. But especially today, the two releases today, which are of Cards and Stones and other changes of note, I'm trying to keep myself together. I'm a little nervous, and I think that mainly comes from the fact that I am still newer to this game. I only came in 3E, and they've been making a lot of keyword changes. I even have a lot of my own models that just got glow ups and stuff like that. And now I'm looking at potentially having a completely rewritten set of cards.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think because I mean, Trevor's even new to like tabletop gaming. So you don't even have previous edition changes from other games to kind of lean back on, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
like the only thing I can relatively compare it to for myself would be a role-playing game like D&D or something like a video game like an MMORPG. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think my vibes are actually I've been pretty steady with everything they've been releasing. Trevor sent me some panic texts and I've had to talk him off the edge a bit. And there was one where he's like, I don't even see a point value. Are they just going to make us play like a standard 7 crew list? And I was like, whoa, Trevor, that's like the crew upgrade like thing. That's not even the actual, the master model. So there are a couple things that we'll talk about that I was a little standoffish on when I read it the first time. But I think the key thing is, and I'll use this example just to kind of lay the groundwork here. The example that I kind of think people really need to wrap their head around is 3E is its own thing. We're going now into a fourth edition. A keyword or a faction or a rule can totally be different and changed and be nothing like it was in third edition. There's nothing that says it's going to be somewhat the same or exactly the same or not at all the same. It could be any hodgepodge mix of all that. So I had somebody in the Bayou chat that they were sitting there being like, well, that's going to be stupid if the sow is only the totem to Ulix 2 because Ulix 1 is the one that creates all these pigs and grows them up. And I had to be like, whoa, maybe Ulix doesn't do that anymore. Maybe it's some kind of other variant or version of him you hire and, maybe you can switch it up. It's just like it can be totally different and it might be better. You never know. It could be worse. Keywords do get worse. I mean, there are edition changes where you're like, well, this is a bad edition for X keyword. So just kind of take it all in when we see. I think the beta is actually going to be really good. Everybody breathe. Everybody
Goose
breathe.
Fraba. Goose Fraba.
Goose Fraba. So, yeah, just everybody calm down. Take it all in. But there is stuff that I did raise eyebrows about, and we will talk about that. So we're going to do this kind of going day by day here. So as we kind of saw this day 1, this day 2, day 3, kind of like how did we feel about everything going into it? And one thing I do also want to caveat here is keep in mind there were rules and interactions and keywords that people did not like about M3E. So it's silly to think that everything's going to be perfect in the 4th edition. So also keep that in mind. There's going to be a rule interaction that's dumb. There always is when there's an edition change. So just take the good. Hopefully there's not a lot of bad. So let's look at day 1, which what was that, the 14th or whatever it was?
Yeah, the nitty gritty, I think, is what it was.
The nitty gritty. So this is the one where they kind of first really started shaking things up for us, right? They kind of walked through a couple things. They talked about some of the shakeups with the models that aren't going to be models anymore, but they are proxies or models you can use to represent other models. So let's talk about that first with kind of just that general list of, okay, some people got upset about this because they feel like some of their toys are now dead. I don't know, Jim. How do you talk somebody down about that?
So, explicitly, every model that you had previously is still a valid model to put on the board. We don't know what those models do yet, but there's nothing like 3rd edition's Dead Man's Hand where it's literally, oh, you cannot play this model. And in fact, if you still own anything from 2nd edition that was Dead Man's Handed in 3rd edition, it now has a valid proxy. So it could, like, for you and me, Bayou players, I know I already have like all the Bayou Gremlins I could ever want in 3rd edition, and I just gained 6 more. Because
See,
the
mine
Banjanista
actually is better than that, Jim, because I had 5 painted, so I actually needed 3 more Bayou Gremlins, and I didn't really. I got them and I assembled them. However, I actually have a Banjanista and some Bushwhackers that I'm like, oh, those are like already painted, so that saves me that time.
But that's the thing, is that while these are being changed, we don't know what the new models do. But there's nothing that we have to say, I guess I can just throw that away now.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good change. I think this is a really good way to approach. The one thing about this that I was raising my eyebrow at is there is a consolidation for the 10 Thunders for the monk keyword.
Yeah.
Where all the different river monks are now just river monk.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what we get from monk overall. And then I like my accessories. If there's something like Shenlong's stances now, I can absolutely see using the appropriate monk sculpts for the appropriate stances if that's still a thing. And that would be fun.
Yeah. And Trevor, what did you think of this list when you kind of first started eyeballing it?
Well, I largely came out of it unscathed. As far as an Explorer Society player goes. But what really kind of stood out to me is, I am cultivating a meta over here in Colorado right now. Yeah. And we have a lot of newer players, and then we have a lot of fringe players that maybe play sometimes and they have a favorite master. One of those people, his favorite master is Levy. So I am a little nervous that we're going to possibly lose that player. And then additionally, there were just a couple of things that stood out to me. And granted, I am obviously not going to be playing Bass anymore. But I remembered you really liking the Pathfinders with Bass.
Yeah.
I noticed that they're kind of...
Yep. Yeah, I think talking about the Pathfinders as Trevor kind of figures his situation there out. I actually, there you are, I think.
Are you there? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay,
I
I'm
can
back.
hear you now.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like the Pathfinder models better than the Ostringers. So I actually don't hate that, though, because I would much rather use the Pathfinders over those Ostringer models. So I actually don't mind that they're proxying. So I kind of like that. It's not like too bad of a feel bad for me.
Yeah. But
are you trying to figure out your camera?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure. It's okay. We don't need to worry.
What'd you do? Kick a cord?
No. So I've been having an issue with my computer where the whole USB bus completely shuts down. So it like disconnects my keyboard and mouse and stuff like that. I'm still trying to figure that out. Anyway, regardless.
Yeah, there was one player in your meta that I did feel bad for, Trevor, because he's been trying to hunt down like Hinamatsu for a while, and I think he finally did he get one, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't even use this in Neverborn anymore.
Yes. Yep. Well, and we have a lot of so they
yeah, all... I'm gonna assume you said yes, but it sounds like you're still figuring it out. Yeah. His computer just blew up.
Oh man.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, dude.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah. So we have a lot of Neverborn players with Hinamatsu that just completely went out the window for now. So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing that I think because some people, I mean, people were asking me about that with Mawtucket, right? Because they were like, you lost the Soulstone Miner, which isn't, it's a proxy now. You also lost the Bushwhackers, which are gremlins now. And you can sit there and be like, just think about how you can't play the way you were playing it. But you also have to think what you're losing. You're probably gaining something as well. We just don't have a full picture of that. And it's kind of cool to speculate because I was sitting there talking on the fireside chat in the Discord, and I was just saying, how cool would it be if Maw all of a sudden was just an Arcanist and she got all the cool Arcanist like mecha arachnids and stuff. And then, yeah, we'll talk about the other random Arcanist drop here soon, but it's cool that they're doing this shakeup. It lets you play with different things that your keywords didn't have access to before, or rules they didn't have, interactions that the new rules are going to take us down. So it's kind of an exciting time to have a shakeup for me. I think that's easier for faction hoppers like ourselves, Jim.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely aware that as someone who has dipped his toe into every faction, something moving from one to another is going to be less impactful to me than someone who's a faction purist.
I do feel bad for those players because if you just are saying, hey, I'm a Neverborn player, or hey, I'm a Levy player, and something drastic happens like this, it does create a stress because you are kind of that purist. However, even if you're a Levy player, I think it is kind of exciting because now you have Rusty who's kind of taking up the mantle. So that's going to be not only a cool storyline, but I'm kind of curious how the crew's going to play with her.
Yeah, and we will wait and see. But no, I think it's valid to be, not a fan of if you went in for a particular model and that model is now a proxy. But I do think it is nice that it is a proxy. You can say, I'm playing Levy, counts as Rusty, but it would be no different than playing Cooper the alt Colette, right?
Yeah.
Cooper and Colette are two different people, but one counts as the other. So it's almost like you got a free Nightmare edition, right?
Yeah. And something else that we kind of started seeing from this list is we do see some models that, once again, they're not going away. They're just proxies, so they're not going to have their own individual rules. A couple of standouts for that are definitely Kojo was one that I was just guessing. I'm like, okay, they're not going to try to make Kojo work, apparently. The Guild Steward, apparently that's a crutch that the Guild just doesn't have anymore, which is fine. It's going to count as a lawyer. Poison Gammon, I have never used, and I guess now I'm going to use him as Wind Gammon when I play Sandeep. Oh, I love the Rotten Bell and Dead Doxy combination because those models look identical to me anyways. So that was cool one too.
Yeah, I think all of these made sense to me. What I really took away from this is that we got a few names that are new to the game.
Yeah.
We have Dawn Serpent is a proxy for something called Mulong.
The totem for Shenlong 2, apparently.
Well, can we even call them Shenlong 2 anymore? Because
I mean, I don't know.
Wyrd has said each title of a master is getting its own core box. So the 1-2 dynamic, maybe we can start referring to models just by the title. So it's Shenlong the Teacher and Shenlong Cobra Kai or whatever.
Maybe.
But
maybe. Let's hear what else they give us with that release. Oh, so apparently this is where they also started kind of giving us some interesting views into what was happening, because they said that for Sui, what's her face, the Sow was going to be the totem for Ulick's Pork Belly Protector. Made in the Mist was just going to be a Tri-Chi model, which that is Shoujo. Jin is going to only be DUA now. Eighth Mate, which is the first mate, is going to be only Infamous. And Hinamatsu is just going to be Ten Thunders and Qian Gong. So we start to kind of get this picture that they're going to start getting rid of dual kind of interactions across factions. And so far that seemed pretty consistent so far.
Yeah, I would agree. That is what it is looking like. Um, I definitely want to slow my roll on that until we actually see until we actually see the cards,
Yeah.
because while I understand from a collecting standpoint, it is, one of the big complaints about the title boxes from third was, oh, if I play Dreamer, why do I want to have an Asami model that I'm not going to use and a Lady Yume that I may not use? Or whatever. Pick your favorite title box and talk about it here. And then if I'm a Neverborn player, I literally can't use Yume for anyone other than Dreamer.
Yeah.
So I can see an argument to get away from that and to I play purple, so every purple box I buy, it can be used with other purple boxes.
Yeah. Because I think the worst case I've had of that interaction, Jim, is in third edition when I played Yan Lo. They're just you had these models that were cool, but you couldn't use them in other Reser or other Ten Thunder factions, and it just didn't make me feel great because you bought these random models, but you only play them when you're playing Yan Lo, and then if you play another master, you can't mix and match them in if you like them. So, yeah, that was one thing that I did not like, because Yan Lo, you have some cool models, but you can't run you couldn't run Manos in Ten Thunder's other crews, right? Which Manos is a great model, we all knew. Fair and balanced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfectly.
I think went the entire edition without edits, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's just made it. Yeah, and Trevor, how would you feel if it was kind of streamlined where there wasn't a crossover between factions like that? It was just your faction, you could use all your models. If we have them.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you don't need your camera, you can leave it off.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it off now. But if there was you said if there's no crossover at all?
Yeah, so if they got rid of all the dual faction stuff, it was just either in your faction or it's not.
So that's kind of the impression that I got, is the direction that things are headed, regardless of whether or not Ashes is what it is right now. It feels like that's the way that they're headed. I'm curious how that will work with, how it's spread between different factions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think it'd probably be okay. I don't see there being a big issue with that, other than the fact that there may be a bit of front end feel bad for something switching to one or the other,
Yeah, and I think something else that's cool out of this announcement for Monday was they did announce that there's a starter box with models that are apparently new or something, and that's going to be kind of cool to see that we actually have a starter to point new players to play these kind of. They kind of made it sound like there's an introductory kind of rule set versus the full whole rule set, so that's kind of cool as well.
I think that was that was the thing I was most excited about, was a 2 crew starter set, because especially building a meta here, having a lot of new people in, having to kind of explain, yes, it's a starter set, but it's actually, you need the core boxes instead. So having to have that explanation, in now having you can buy this and have 2 crews ready to go. And I think that's fantastic. It's something that the game is needed for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's great because you can just use that to run your demos. You can even probably carry it in whatever box it's going to be packaged in. And speaking of packaging boxes, they're going to fix that stupid issue with having to buy and split this random box, but you can't split because you want the one model that you share. Here's looking at you, Kurgan, and rip for Kurgan and Neverborn. But, anyways, so they're fixing that issue, and apparently they're going to repackage them. We saw a preview of that on one of the, I think it was it the Danger Planet guys? They showed the Sonya Creed box.
They did.
And it looks great. So I love the way the packaging looks. It looks bold and awesome. So that's a great fix that I think we needed as well.
Mm-hmm. And not for nothing, they do mention that the starter box that they're going to be providing has Fate decks pre-assembled models, so we don't have to worry about building models for new players.
Big for new players.
Tokens, markers, and a quick start guide. So the fact that I emphasize the tokens and markers, there is with those, all you really need at that point is a measuring tape and a table.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the table, they do say that the deployment zones are staying the same. So everyone who has gotten mats, like Trevor, I know you just got several nice mats.
Yeah, you didn't have to get them redone.
Yeah, that's
good. So I really like that because that's backwards compatible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the last thing is they are doing something that I think helps people that have stuff, because one, just like third edition, they're going to give out but you're going to have faction packs to update your collection's cards. And then two, you can buy just the totems for, they said, up to a year. Mm-hmm. So that way you don't have to buy the whole box just for one model if you don't want to, even though I know I probably will for a lot, because some of those resculpts are going to be sick.
Yeah, if the art that they've previewed in some of these things are a sign of what's to come,
yeah,
I know I'm going to be rebuying boxes and models I already own.
Yep.
Just for the hobby side of things.
Yeah, I think
So
Trevor,
you
might be spared a little, Trevor, though, because Explorers are pretty new, so you might not have to hurt your wallet as much.
Yeah, hopefully not. Is that what we're thinking though? Is that there may be resculpts for the masters on top of the totems for the individual version?
The Sonya art looked like it.
Okay.
Yes, the Sonya art looked like new art, and
like
historically,
Sam Hopkins looked new. She looked new, and the other models looked a little different too from the art. Which the art traditionally in Malifaux matches the model.
Unless you're playing Honeypot, but that's the one exception. But for me, it was Zip. The first video they dropped, we have a brand new Zip that is, he's like doing a weird Rocket Man pose as opposed to this like hunched over thing with a giant smoke cloud after him. And there was a new Earl art, and now today we just saw something called what was it, like an Iron Bug or something.
Yeah,
so that tells me that there's probably some amount of it. If it's just new art, it's just new art. But that box was second edition, and Iron Skeeters are terrible to transport, so I can see a resculpt to make things easier to transport.
Yeah. So I think day one was just a lot of people feeling a little feel bad about the shakeup of models going away. But I think people can recognize that model bloat was something they had to condense a bit. And it just stinks when it's one of your favorite models, right? That's kind of where it comes down to. But you can still use that favorite model, so still use those cool models on the table.
Yeah.
Except for Levy.
But you can
still use Levy as Rusty.
As Rusty, right.
And Rusty's background is actually pretty interesting, and it's going to be cool to see if she kind of realizes how bad Levy was, or if she's going to try to rescue Levy from whatever fate he's fallen to. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
So the next post that we have focuses mostly on terrain, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I think the consensus was, hey, we have some of this cool terrain. Let's be able to use that dynamic terrain in a fun but simple way. So how did you guys feel generally about the terrain changes? Obviously, it's not all of them, but Trevor, how are you feeling about terrain? Because I know this would have been nice on that stupid board you made with all the elevation changes.
I'm actually really excited about it. I do think this opens up for more unique styles of boars, more verticality. Is that the right
Verticality.
verticality? Okay, that is a word,
Sounds like
right?
a word.
But it opens up for more verticality. It opens up for like different, like it said, like the rooftops. Because I was actually even just spitballing with Josh in my local meta the other day. It would be cool to do like a rooftop scenario, but I don't know exactly how that would work. And like this is literally that. I do think simplifying that section of Malifaux is huge as far as like speeding up the game, things like that. There's definitely a little bit there they'll need to hash out because I think there are some people that have some concerns still about being able to get cover and that somebody just standing on top of something shooting can't just shoot everything. Because it doesn't really dig in deep about it.
I think my favorite one was Josh made a diagram of somebody shooting on top of a roof and somebody shooting at the bottom on the ground level, and it made this image of a bullet curving over the top of the building, and it's like somehow these two models can shoot each other, and I was like, well, we don't have all of the rules for how these
Right.
interactions are going to happen, so
Yeah.
there might be some nuance there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they go in, and make a point about having cover and concealment be so impactful and having, and you're standing on top of the terrain and you ignore all that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what it actually, and because like the paragraph talks about people who are just, the models aren't standing still, they're crouching behind chimneys, laying low and making use of the environment. So I think what I'm taking away from this post is that our tables are probably going to get more dense. We're going to have more different levels of terrain, so a lot more flat top surfaces, almost like an infinity board.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to create things, because I know our local scene has a lot of buildings with, slanted roofs that you can't put a model on, and citadel forests, and that's just not going to cut it anymore. So I'm excited for it, but I'm also apprehensive about the fact that we're going to need to invest in new terrain.
Yeah, and I do like how they talked about elevation changes. Like pretty much you could just go from like, this level to that level, and it's not, because before it was like, okay, does this take away my movement? Do I got to like double walk to get up there? Like, how does that interact? And now it's cleaned up a bit. And keep in mind, once again, like I know people were thinking about, because if you're in cover, you get what, -1 damage now is what they said in the article.
Yeah, it reduces it by
damages.
Yeah, and I don't hate that. I mean, Guild Ball used to have a similar rule, right? Where if you were within X distance of terrain, your opponent got -1 dice, or you got +1 defense, or something like that. So yeah, it doesn't have to be super complicated for terrain to be engaging and interesting. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for the terrain to get cleaned up a bit to make some of these cool dynamic Malifaux boards just be more playable, right?
Well, and it's actually going to be a part of the potential schemes at this point as well. I mean, they made that very clear, even leading into the next scheme topic. But it's cool that they're making that. They're really encouraging it by making it a part of some of the schemes.
Yeah, and I think that's a great kind of way to move that, because one of the schemes that they revealed was the Scout the Rooftops one, right? Where they were talking about, you might have to, put ski markers at different levels at different parts of the board. And they alluded to this one scheme where apparently you chuck somebody off of a roof. So that was kind of interesting.
Right?
I love that idea. Make it look like an accident.
Yeah, I think that the schemes are, like I said at the top, I think the schemes are what I'm most excited for, because it really seems like you can build a narrative of what you're trying to do with your models, and it's not it's more narrative, less clinical. I feel like at the end of third, schemes were very clinical in their application. Like, I just have to go and do these actions in these spots, and Like narratively, what are my Silverite doing when they go wide and drop scheme markers?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are they just planting eggs or something? But now it's like, oh no, they're actually scouting the rooftops. They are doing this, and that captures some of that narrative magic for me that really got me into the game.
Well, and that's also going to force scenes to make more dynamic boards because you have to have terrain that fits that narrative.
Right.
Right.
And if you just so happen, like, I'm not too worried about you not having it, because if you just so happen to have one of those schemes in the pool, you can just re-rack and do a different pool. You know, if like just so happens you don't have a board with that game, you can just randomize it and do a different pool.
Exactly.
Yep.
2 editions now, Wyrd has tried to introduce a rule where you can mulligan a scheme. Each time, it was way too complicated and people didn't like it. And now they've made it a core part of the schemes, and I love it.
Yeah, so basically the way it looks like, so we still don't know, the strats presuming are still going to be kind of a similar vibe. They just talked about the schemes. And as far as from what they revealed, it sounds like when the game begins, there's a randomly selected 3 schemes that are generated at the beginning of the game. Is that kind of the vibe, or am I misreading that? That sounds like
No, they say in here, and they do say gaining ground 0. So we are starting the edition with a gaining grounds document.
Yep.
It says when a game begins, 3 of the 12 schemes are randomly selected to form the scheme pool. Each player secretly chooses 1 scheme, so you only need to remember 1. There's no more of, hey, you're brand new to the game. All right, I need you to have this primary objective and pick 2 of these 5 secondary objectives and keep them secret and don't tell me. Like, that's a lot of bookkeeping for a new player. And now having, a single scheme to worry about on top of presumably a strategy that we both know about, that's less bandwidth you have to spend thinking.
Yeah, and it looks like because they showed Scout the Rooftops, which when you reveal it by having 2 friendly scheme markers, no enemy models within 2, on different terrain pieces that are height 2 or greater. You gain 1 VP. And then there's an opportunity when you reveal this to score an additional, so you can score 2 VPs off this. So if both terrain pieces are completely on the enemy table half, you gain 1 additional VP. So the thing that's kind of cool is they were talking about a narrative, right, where it kind of progresses. So after you score this or abandon it, they said you could just abandon the scheme as well. It gives you 3 other schemes that are available to do after this, right? Which is kind of cool because this one for scouting the rooftops, apparently then you can either choose light the beacons, assassinate, or breakthrough. So it's like you're kind of signaling to the rest of your crew, like, hey, go ahead and pop a shot at the leader, or hey, go ahead and, get the boys over to that area. You're kind of signaling for your crew to do stuff.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very narrative.
It's very
I think
narrative,
it's cool.
which is cool.
Yep.
I do like the idea of abandoning a scheme because sometimes you're just like, this isn't working out. Let's move on to a different thing I can score.
Yeah, how many times have you picked a scheme that requires you to name a model and then turn 1 that model's dead?
Yeah,
Well,
I think we were talking about Hidden Martyrs was one where we're like, yep, it definitely sucks when your Hidden Martyrs both get smoked turn 1.
Well, and the ability to get that extra point means that you are not completely down and out. Now, we still don't know how many turns there are going to be because they haven't released that information yet.
Yeah.
But essentially, you could make up that point if you got the extra point on the next 2 schemes that you choose. You could still max points even if you abandon yours first round, because the other thing that was notable to me on this card was on the reveal, it does say you may reveal this scheme at the end of any turn. So that means first turn, people. I mean,
Possibly. That you do make a good point. Most scheme language today will say any turn after the first. And this is just saying any turn.
Yeah.
That's a distinction I hadn't caught up on. And they do say you can score 5 victory points. So yeah, so you can easily catch up if you hit these bonus points.
Yeah, so it's curious, right? Because you can score 5 off of schemes, but we still don't know strats. So it's like, okay, is it going to be 4 turns and you can score turn 2, 3, and 4, so that caps you at 8? Is it 5 turns? You can score 4 of those turns, so we're capped at 9. So it's kind of curious to see what the totality of possible points we can score is going to be.
Or could you potentially max out your schemes turn 3 and then just focus on your strat?
Yeah, I mean, possibly. That's not bad. Just speed race to it, and then just be like, all right, we're focusing on the strategy.
And I mean, there is a lot of folks who have commented about, 3rd edition Malifaux definitely became a kill a foe kind of game. And if you have the ability to front load schemes because you build a crew that is really good at that, you could, in theory, bring back the world of I scheme, I get tabled, I still win because I scored first.
Yeah, because you focused on the mission as opposed to just hate in your heart. Yeah, so that was definitely exciting. I think a lot of people, this is where I think when the schemes got announced that, hey, this is how it's going to work, I think this was one of the days where people were really excited about the potential of what's coming, right?
Yep. I was still very excited at this point, and just even seeing the combinations where if you've got a crew and then you've got a familiar path where you're like, okay, these guys are really good at doing scout and then assassinate and then something else. Like you can kind of, once you get familiar with that gaining grounds, you can probably start pathing out the schemes as you go through them based on the crew that you're playing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that kind of leads us into, there were 2 releases today. So we'll talk about the first one where they kind of go through how you can use your cards and your stones. So they have this empower thing, right? And the rationale they have for this empower thing is apparently every model can do empower. And basically what you do is if you have cards in your hand, you can pitch a card to get a positive, or actually, no, it's not any card. It's a card of 5 or lower, right? Because it says you can empower it by discarding a card with a value of 5 or lower. And then that gives you a positive flip and a suit of the discarded card to your duel total.
Yes.
So it's a pseudo stone-ish kind of ability, but I didn't realize it was, and this is just me rereading it, I didn't realize it was 5 or lower. I thought you could pitch any card.
No, it's specifically weeks. So now weeks in your hand have value, but you can't just you don't just get 6 free soul stones. I'm using air quotes because this is a podcast and everyone can see that.
Yep.
But it also, they talked about concealment being more impactful. This lets you get around concealment.
Yeah, because we didn't mention concealment now affects close combat melee as well.
It does, which means, that I think impact, and we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the last article from today. But it definitely feels like they're trying to disincentivize raw combat. But you were talking about stone usage, and the other, what I thought was bigger from today's article, is that soul stones are no longer generic.
This is where Trevor started getting in panic mode and started to send me texts.
Yeah, this is honestly, this article, here's just my base opinion on it, is just number one, they're giving everybody Voice of Society, which, no, I'm just kidding. But the part of the game that I fell in love with are the different options for soul stones. Also, based on the lore, I feel like using soul stones was based on just the more powerful people in Malifaux being able to wield that magic and to be able to do it in a certain way. And so, like I'm a big card game player. I come from a card playing family. We grew up playing hearts and bridge and spades and different trump games and stuff like that. So like knowing when to pitch those lows or save them for certain things, I think is a part of the strategy of a card game. So for me, I was feeling like this was an easy out for new people. And I know that it's not, like, I'm coming around on it definitely, but my first initial impact of this article was, what have they done? You know, they've taken
Why would
away
you do this to me?
this, like, the uniqueness of soul stones and given that ability to people that I didn't think could use soul stones by the crew card. And then
Yeah, and I think that, and this is kind of, I started think because I tried to think about it outside of M3E, right? Because I was trying to think about, okay, so soul stones are for like powerful abilities. So how are they using this now? And we see from that article, there's going to be a soul stone icon basically now on cards, whether it's the crew card, which is basically just like your crew abilities, kind of the thing that gives you your ness of your keyword. But also, there's going to be these soulstone abilities on henchmen and masters. So I'm envisioning that, and I don't know for sure. I'm just kind of seeing it from the Lady J card. They spoiled part of one of her actions, and it has a soulstone. So I'm envisioning you probably spend a soulstone to get that trigger, and the triggers are going to be powerful. They're going to have a big impact when you use them. So I'm envisioning that being key for henchmen and masters. Whereas the positive flip and stuff, I thought it was more reliable once the first time I read it, but now that I see you only get the suit of the card you discarded, it's not even just, hey, pick a suit. That's going to be like when we look at our hand now and we go, okay, this ram is for, Maw Tuck, its creative cousin. This, crow is going to be for my deja vu trigger. It's going to be the same thing when you look at your hand in 4th edition where you go, oh, there's a low crow. I'm going to use that for this trigger on this minion. And it's going to make hiring, I think, more diverse because think about how many times you make a crew list now and you say, I like free corpsmen. I just don't like that this is unreliable. Or I don't, and I'm not saying that's the case, but you know what I'm saying. There's some model in your head that you like, but you don't bring because it kind of sucks. It's like they just don't do enough. I can't guarantee they're going to get this trigger, so I just don't bring them. This kind of solves that problem where now I can bring a minion that maybe, like for example, Necropunks. Necropunks don't see a lot of play because you can't guarantee the mask anymore on the leap. So now, not saying they still have it, but if they do, you can keep a mask and be like, cool, I'm going to discard that to get a positive on my leap, and I have the mask built in now. So it creates not more consistency, but it gives you more decision points and power with what you're going to use those cards for.
I can see that.
I did it.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Trevor.
Jim.
I want to acknowledge that. Yeah, this is a huge change.
It is a change.
This is a big change in how soulstones have been used because in 2nd edition and in 3rd edition, soulstones always were generic. They were the same no matter who you were playing. They were a constant. So this is a bold choice by Wyrd, and we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that there's not general uses for them anymore, because then in my mind I go, okay, so we can't reduce damage anymore with soul stones. So
that scares me. That really scares me. Yeah.
In 3E that would terrify me, right? But I think in 4E that means one, there's going to have to be something on the cards to maybe make your crew a little more durable. Terrain's going to have a bigger impact on reducing that. Or they're going to scale back damage. And I think once we get to the other article, we're going to start to see that it looks like damage is getting scaled back a bit.
Yeah.
So I concur with that. I do want to say that we don't know what the soulstone, how often people are bringing soulstones and how many they're bringing on average when you hire. Because, for example, what I'm reading when I see this is I'm thinking about, because I grew up with Warhammer, so Warhammer 40k has something called command points. And command points are used to spend for stratagems, which are unique abilities for that army. So you spend 2 command points to get an effect that's unique to you. This feels very much like that over something like what Soulstones have been. And so that, I think, rewards people who want to play in keyword, because they'll know what their keyword Soulstone things are. But here at the bottom of this article,
I was just going to say that.
it does say that there's a catch-up mechanic where when a friendly model dies, your crew gains a Soulstone. And so I'm seeing this and I'm going, maybe this means people are more likely to bring minions in this edition, because even if they die, you get more stones back for these big flashy things. So,
or you have a crew like Levy or somebody who kills their own models and you get soul stones for that.
Like who?
I meant Rusty.
Yeah. See, but joking aside, I think this is really going to need testing during open beta to see how it pans out.
So a few final thoughts from me on this are just, when you remove the generic different options that you can use the soul stones for, we will now have to relearn for every keyword how many you think you might need to bring based on their abilities and the henchmen and the masters and how they
but
put
we were
those
already
on the
doing
cards.
that anyways, right?
I mean, not exactly, because when you brought a pool of soul stones, even if you didn't use it to get a suit, you could use it to reduce damage or get a positive or give somebody a negative.
I mean,
and especially giving somebody a negative when you know they're going to hit you strong was integral to
I think
survivability.
we were still doing that though with, if for example, if I'm playing a summoner, I want a bunch of soul stones. If I'm playing a henchman heavy crew, I want a bunch of soul stones. If I'm playing a crew that generates soul stones, I don't need as many soul stones, right? So when I played Mawtucket, I'd usually only bring 2 or 3 soul stones because I was like, I'm going to get probably 5 or 10 throughout the game. So I think we already did it to some extent, but I agree. If you have a master who has some killer soulstone triggers, you might go, dang, son, I'm going to bring like 15 soul stones.
I'm sure they'll still cap it. These are some of the chess piece type things that I love about Malifaux. And again, the reason why I'm so passionate about this, I love this game and I love it. I've loved it in its current iteration. And I'm not going to discredit it. But yes, they are changing. They are changing what I love.
But see, that's the thing though. I'm okay with them changing some of the currency balancing that you have to do, some of the decision points, some of the simplification. I'm okay with that as long as they replace them with other interesting decision points. Just that might not take as long as, we were spending, which I think brings us to the next article. I was sitting at work and all of a sudden I see the Discord going off. I'm finishing my paperwork. I'm all like, oh, okay, yeah, they're talking. All of a sudden I see somebody say, hey, no more damage flips. And I was like, say again for Big Fudge. Say again. What? Do what now? That was the first time where I actually sat back and I looked. I'm like, somebody's gonna have to do some talking around this and help me think this one out a bit. I don't know. This one hit me a little bit. This one I was like, I don't know if I love that.
Oh, I'm all over this. This is my jam. I love this.
So I will say I was able to think of how this is going to play out, but I think a lot of people like myself looked at it and was like, what in the F are they doing?
I have been burned by flipping black and red on damage enough times that not flipping that, I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
That's Malifaux. That's Malifaux. Yeah. You don't have another option for that to really affect play of the game. Like that's
I mean, you
fate.
still do with the to hit, right? The duels, that'll still impact it a lot.
Right. No, there will be fewer of those super swingy, memorable moments. Absolutely.
Like when you're gearing up for something big and you just black, as much as that is frustrating, that is Malifaux, you know? 0 damage.
I mean, if you flip it on to hit, presumably, we don't know, but that's still going to pretty much auto miss your attack if you flip the black, right?
Well, I mean, I think there's an opportunity here where if what makes damage happen is the difference, this raise mechanic, we might be allowed to have folks who are good at attacking, like Lord Cooper might have a stat 7 gun because he's more likely to get a raise to do those damage things.
And I think now that I'm thinking about the opportunities, so if you haven't read the article yet, folks, basically there's not a damage flip, but if there's a difference of 5, you get basically a +1 to damage for each difference from the duel total.
Yeah, it's the
so there's
raise
still
system.
yeah, I think there's still a world where we still have these swingy moments, but it's going to be like you flip the black joker, I flipped or cheated in a 13. Okay, that's +2 damage. So my 4 damage that I do to you is now 6 damage.
Right. And, in one of the things that they've said at the very start of this reveal process is they did come into this wanting to speed up the game. Because some folks, and I know I've experienced it myself, so I'm not just saying it's some folks, like this vague thing. I know I have experienced games that could easily go over 4 hours. Because
Yeah.
it's a
and
complex...
I think the damage flip was part of that, right? Because Rich in the Rage Quit Wire Discord, he said, okay, so there's a difference of 5, so that's a negative flip. But I used focus, so that's a straight flip. But you have hard to wound, so that's a negative flip. I got a puncture trigger, so that's a straight flip for damage. I stone you to a neg. So we're removing that whole conversation of figuring out if I'm on a straight or a positive or whatever, which will just innately speed the game up.
Yeah. Yes. It does
Which
remove
is one
some
of
of the it does remove some of the strategic decision making though.
Well, there's still strategy behind it because you can cheat to get at basically even, which then puts it at -1 damage for your opponent. But I will say, and Trevor, you probably came across this as well when you were doing your demos and stuff. I think the card difference thing was the hardest thing to explain to new players. Just the variance of, if it's this variance, it's a negative. This one, it's a straight. This one, it's a positive. I think that's one of the hardest thing for players to kind of wrap their minds around when they first got in.
I would definitely agree. I do think, like, I always had the rule card, like that little card that they give you. I always had that right next to them because I still use that every game. I still just bring it with me as a reminder. And I definitely do see that. I am a little sad about losing the damage track, like the 2, 3, 4, or for instance, my hopeful prospects just got a beautiful glow up of a 1, 3, 5 with a crit strike. And I wonder where that now places them. Because they're not going to give them a 3 damage.
Yeah, I kind of thought about that too, Trevor. I was sitting there thinking, man, what does this mean for what does this mean for damage now? And what I started to envision is, and like I said, I have no basis for this. It's just how I see the game starting to unfold if I was Wyrd. Because you're not just going to have, everybody's just doing 2 damage. That would be stupid. But what's going to happen is you're going to have an action probably that just does a static damage, just like, hey, this is damage 2. This does 3 damage. This does 4 damage. And then the modifications off of the duel, terrain, and then whatever triggers or abilities they have are probably going to boost or negate damage to get certain effects, which is kind of cool because I can envision you reducing the damage you're doing to maybe get an alternate effect. So maybe it's like you can reduce the damage by 1 to summon a mindless zombie, or I can take a point of damage to increase the damage by 1, or something to that effect where maybe there's just a static ability that says while you're within 3 of this model, models get +1 to damage. So I see what they can do with it, and I think that's going to be interesting in its own right as well.
I also wanted to point out, and I don't quote me exactly, but my recollection is that this damage approach is similar to what they have for the other side.
Okay.
So the other, because the other side uses a similar kind of flat damage effect, if I'm remembering correctly. So we may want to have someone put some time looking at that.
I'm
to
pretty
see
sure
what kind of
that Rich
effects.
did confirm that is the way that the other
Okay.
side works. I was actually wondering a little bit if some of these card changes are also going to make it more integral in a way that the other side models and Malifaux models can interact more, so they can do a little bit more promotion to the other side. I actually was kind of thinking that might be part of the case already. And which I'm totally cool for as long as it doesn't, drop one to support the other kind of deal. But I'm kind of just wondering how I'm going to get the same feeling
Yeah, I think that's
from
the
a
big
card.
thing, right?
Like, I love the hopeful prospects because of that feeling that it gives me when I spike 6 damage off of just a little 4-cost model. And like the only way I could see them doing that is reducing the raise amount, like maybe the hopeful prospects start with 2 damage and then they actually only have a raise of 3. So if you beat them by 3, it's a +1. Or beat them by 6, it's a +2, and then they've got 4 damage on it. But I just don't see it spiking. I don't see a lot of these spiking to that high level anymore.
Now, listen. I want everybody to gather around and listen to Uncle Pete here for a second, okay? So I've been through quite a bit of edition changes in my days. So I used to play a lot of Warhammer Fantasy. One of my favorite things I believe it was, I want to say it was 7th edition Warhammer Fantasy. Items were hidden knowledge. Your opponents did not know what items your characters had, like the heroes and the lords. Mm-hmm. They had no idea what item was on there. They just saw the points that you paid that was extra. So one of my favorite things to do, Trevor, was I had this nerdy little wizard, probably only cost about 70 points, which was not a lot in that game. And there was an item that was called the Van Hellstrom Speculum. I might have got the name wrong a little bit, but it's pretty close. And what that did, Trevor, is when you got into combat, the wizard would go, I have this speculum, and he would switch stats with the model he was engaged with. So he would go up to these greater demons, these massive fighty things, and be like, cool, bro, I have all your stats now. You die because you have all my crap, stat 3s. And then they die. And it was the funniest thing. People saw it coming a mile away, but it was still hilarious. That was not a thing in 8th edition, right? So I'm sitting here like, oh man, I can't have this cool interaction. But they introduced a new mechanic that made it kind of crazy to get some spells off that were irresistibly, meaning like they couldn't be countered. And there was a couple of those where you could just nuke a unit, and that was entertaining in its own right. So we're not going to have the exact same memories that we have from 3rd edition, but I think 4th has there's some bones here that we're starting to see that are going to create some pretty fun moments, I think. Mm. And honestly, I tell people this as well. If you don't love 4th edition when you start playing it, there's other games out there. I'm not trying to say don't play Malifaux, but I have stopped playing games because edition changes were bad. I don't think that's the case here, though, from what I'm seeing so far. Being honest, Uncle Pete time, over. There we go.
Can we talk about engagement now?
We can.
Yeah, I mean, apparently everybody has a 1-inch engagement. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't have an engagement.
So I just got to say, as a Tri-Chi enjoyer, with
monster
2-inch reach all over the place and movement shenanigans, I'm disappointed. Not gonna lie, I feel like controlling what your enemy models can do was a critical element in mitigating things like big guns. You brought a big gun, well, you have to have a way to deal with engagement. And now friendly fire's not a thing. and you can leave engagements freely. I do like getting rid of the disengage strike because there was always questions I had about things like, do you get defense triggers on disengage? Or
Hey, Jim, tell me about Pete trying to disengage so I could get my Calypso back, but you kept hitting me with Brewmaster to make me get disengage 0. So here's Pete just spinning his tires, not moving at all when he's trying to disengage.
it was great. It made my
I don't
weekend.
swear anymore, but I'm pretty sure I almost swore.
You did. It was fun. That said, I absolutely think that there is, as a baseline rule, if they're willing to explore things like this model has +1 to its engagement range, or models cannot leave this model's engagement range without discarding a card, things that actually make engagement punishing, I'm going to be a lot more for it.
I think that if we look at how 3rd edition, I could see some abilities from 3rd edition for that purpose carrying over. For example,
Like
hunting
Deva.
and hunting partners as well, with like clockwork traps where you have to discard a card to disengage. The Devas, right? If you disengage or you move away, they get clingy. The leftovers, you can only disengage. You can't place outside of it. Yeah. So, and you still can't interact and your movement's halved. So there is still penalties if you do disengage. It's just not a flip anymore. And I think also some people, you had to kind of explain disengage because some people weren't as comfortable with that action. So you had to sit there and be like, okay, well, it's still a negative, and now you're reducing my movement by. I thought the severe penalty for disengage flips was stupid. Reducing movement by 6, just saying you can't disengage at all. I thought that was dumb. It's like, okay, so just F me, right? I just wasted a whole action and I got nothing out of it. Great. I just wasted
That's the
time and
point.
cards.
Yeah,
That's the point. If I'm spending the resources to put a severe into stopping you from moving,
right.
I better stop you from moving.
Yeah,
No,
and
no, Jim.
I
It was still
definitely
stupid.
don't like that somebody can just walk away and shoot you with their gun. I don't like, as somebody who plays
It's still an
Cooper.
action, so they're not getting to shoot you twice.
Yeah, but they can
Don't
still
you like
walk.
that as a Cooper player that you can just back up and shoot?
That's what I'm saying though, is even as a Cooper player, even as some, like, I've played against enough guns that I would prefer to try to keep that person engaged if possible, for them to not be able to do that or not be able to interact. Or I even like the interaction between, like, hey, I have 2 inches, you have 1 inch. I'm engaged with you. You're not engaged with me. I can interact. You like I like that whole deal. But
Yeah, I am kind of curious how we, like you were saying, Jim, we don't know if they're going to add, like, we could almost maybe use Brewmaster 1 as an example, because I think that they even mentioned in one of the articles the crew cards were kind of foreshadowed by the Asami update. So I'm wondering if the Brewmaster 1 update is going to foreshadow engagement where you have something that's range 8, but it counts as engaging in melee if you want to. So I think there is going to be some things revealed like that where they're going to adjust what engaged looks like, whether it's penalties or things you can and can't do depending on the model that's engaging you.
Probably. I mean, they do say that they want wizards to be wizards casting spells. They want snipers to be snipers. So they don't need a token melee action to have a engagement range. Like, I get that. No one's ever taking a knife action with a Austringer, right? But
I don't know. I took a knife action with a Pathfinder before.
they could create a general action called kick.
Yeah,
in
kick
the shin.
chest. Or hold
That's the
hold by a
trigger.
shirt.
the trigger is in the shin.
In the shin.
How do you guys feel about the tokens and the berry mechanic going away?
I'll let you take this one first, Trevor.
Sure, yeah. So the next couple of sections here, the crew cards, berry, and tokens. This is a section that I really like. Now the berry thing,
I'm not sure how everybody else will feel about that. I don't play primarily Berry crews. I have been very hurt by Berry crews, so I'm not just excited about it because of that. Like that, the Berry I still have a question mark on. But as far as the crew card goes and the tokens, I think it's phenomenal. I like having a crew card with the crew ability on there rather than it being on every card, and then being able to flip it over and see, okay, these are the tokens and these are the conditions and the stuff I'm going to have to worry about for this particular crew. I think that's phenomenal for the game, like, and for newer
How
players.
great is that to be like when you're in a game, Trevor? You just go, "Hey, here's what my crew mainly does."
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's huge. And simplifying the tokens, because I think that might be number one on game, like people being able to finish turns on time. And I mean like people who have to keep track of it themselves, especially when you're putting a bunch of poison
in the game I played against Josh in the Rocky Mountain, Trevor. It probably was a draw game, but because he was finicking with all of his poison tokens from start to finish, it really cost him time where he clocked himself. And in this version, it's just check yes, poison, check no, you're not poison. So definitely. I don't know, Jim, what do you think about Barry going away? How do you feel about that as somebody who was on the Terra episode from 2 or 3 years ago?
I think it's good for the game.
Fair.
I think that you can explore what Barry was trying to do in other... So Obliteration and Marshall were the two main crews dealing with Barry. You can do other things to explore that. The design space for those keywords.
Yeah.
Other models that buried really grew into weird places. So Barry became this catch-all term for you're not on the board. How is it that a pilot inside a giant robot crab is considered able to be punched by something that punches things that's in the void, but the minute he steps out of his robot crab, he can't be punched across the board? Or
yeah, I definitely see that for sure.
So I think that what Barry was doing was weird. It also had this weird interaction with movement and place rules, where being buried wasn't a move, but unburying was a place, ergo it was a move. And so people, what does this proc things? And it asks questions. It also takes your toys off the board, and no one likes being told, "Oh, I'm so glad you built, painted, and brought that big model. Sorry, it's taken off the board and it doesn't get to do anything."
Yeah, and I think
don't play
also
with your toys.
I think a big problem with the bury mechanic too is it wasn't uniform. So, for example, if you buried something, and this is where Trevor, you got to super feel bad, because there was one bury where you were like, "Oh, Ivan or Euripides, whoever it was, buries my model in an ice pillar or shadow marker. Well, cool. When I activate, I get to just pop out, right? Right?
Yeah, it was
I just
it
get
was
to pop out, right?
Thune. I think is it Thune? Is that his name?
Yeah, Thune.
Yeah, it was Thune, and I had played Terra that weekend, so I didn't quite realize that there wasn't an unbury option. So I had the card in hand to cheat, to get a high enough willpower or whatever to not be buried, but I kept it because I was saving it for when I could activate that model and get out, and I didn't realize that you just cannot get out. And he,
Unless you
with
destroy
all
the
the
marker.
ice pillars, like basically Anya, my master, and Irina, who helps remove those ice pillars, both got locked up in ice pillars, and then he just boom, 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 like completely locked those away. So I would have had to slam, like it was game over, like turn 3 for me. For that.
Yeah, so that's not the same. And then even when you do unbury for tests that you take, it's super clunky and worded. It's like you get to unbury by enemy model, but people get confused on if it's I'm the enemy or you're the enemy, and do you control the place or do I control the place? So it's just it's probably good that it's gone, but I know people that played those mechanics and loved it will, just think of it as like an old boyfriend or girlfriend, right? It's nice, you had your fun, you're moving on to more serious things now.
Yeah. I do
So
want to
yeah,
take
Baron
a
going away
moment.
probably good for the game in
Yeah.
general.
I do want to take a moment to talk about tokens.
Jim, preach.
The what I'm focused in on this section on tokens is anything that temporarily alters a model that's not damage or movement is a token. And they even call out the non-condition conditions, like vent steam. I put up vents, boring conversation. I'm thinking of stuff like you would give Pandora, could discard a card and say, you now have December's influence. Until the end phase, you have this on every duel. Or, you were talking Fry Corpsman earlier. The Fry Corpsmans discard a card to get a suit of their choice until the end phase.
Yeah.
All these things that you're like, can I remove it? Can I, like, what happens? Or my favorite, Lone Swordsman's bone tactical action where he pushes and attacks someone, and until the end phase has positives to attack and damage against that target. What if he uses that twice on the same target? Does he get double plus on the second attack? If he gets obeyed out of activation, does he have triple plus? Or the duet. Just the duet. And what transfers over when you, like, if all this is from 3rd edition perspective, so it's not going to mean a hill of beans in like 3 months. Yeah. But like, if Von Stuck 2 says, hey, duet, you're not significant anymore, and then it turns into a Corvi and then turns back into a duet, is it still not significant?
Yeah, and I think that having tokens yeah, exactly, because having tokens is now like, okay, you just have that token unless it gets removed by presumably some kind of effect, like whether it's assist or whatever the version in 4th edition is going to be, you have that token until you don't. So yeah, that's definitely interesting.
I am interested to see how they will make the changes, though, for people like Brewy, for people like, I've been playing a lot of Tiri lately, and having multiple shielded is very different than all of a sudden your shielded condition is removed and I don't get to automatically take my triggers anymore from one being removed. Like, from that going away right away. So I'm interested to see how they'll do that, because, having 2 or 3 shielded was a big difference.
Assuming shielded is even a condition anymore, Trevor.
Hey now, right? Well, assuming I even have Tiri anymore.
Here's that lets me transition to something that I wanted to talk about. Did you see the video that Defective Dice
I
posted?
have not, because it's my Lent abstaining from, but I got the notes and I saw the screenshot, so I am aware.
So here's why I bring that up, Trevor. You might find this interesting. Have you seen the video?
I have not.
All right, so 2 things. He details that some models are moving from one faction to another. Specifically, the title box shared models are almost all going to one of those 2 masters.
Like a messy divorce.
And the thing that stands out to me in his list is that it's all the models that are on their current card, one color, are going to that faction. So, for example, for teal, with a few exceptions. So teal, actually, Cooper is getting the Empyrean Eagles as a totem. Maxine's getting Bo Fishbacher as a totem. The Nexus crew, the Nexus crew is keeping Kavatica, Ivan is keeping Jin, Anya is keeping Drudges, and Jedza is getting the Kurgan as a totem.
Somewhere Dixon is very sad.
But nowhere does it say that Castor gets the Unseelie engine, and the Unseelie engine is teal. So, with all that said, I would wager that Tiri is staying teal.
Yeah, because
Now, I don't know for sure.
Trevor's going to start playing Outcasts.
Well, I've just been dropping her a lot lately, and I just got her all built and primed, and I was like, oh no, I'm not sure if this is gonna be lasting there. You know, I kind of dodged a bullet with Bass. I did not have any of his stuff yet, and then McCabe.
So,
you know, I don't have McCabe either. So
I would have sworn. The way I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, you know, the fluff, he's not quite happy with the guild at the moment. You know, okay, Bernadette, or not Bernadette, but Pearl can also play for Parker and Outcast. So is he going to stay in guild? Could he float into Outcast? I was like, no, he's probably going to stay in Explorers. I think that makes sense. And then what ends up happening? Boom, Arcanist.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Wow.
it being Bass going to Arcanist, I think really hammers the fact that it looks like Arcanist is on the verge of fracturing. Because we now have Colette, Tony, Bass, and like those are the human worker angle, and we have Karis, Raspy, Sandeep, and I don't know of anyone else. One of the releases, you know, one of the not release, but the notes I took from the Defective Dice video.
Yeah.
The only keywords that are currently blue, that are listed as not blue in that, are Mei Feng under orange with the rock hopper. But there's no indication here where Marcus is going or where Hoffman is going. Now, that said, we will see where it ends up shaking out, but it looks like Bayou lost a lot of their
and
Bayou options.
Bayou might even lose Zip, because we see this little Iron Wing image that was on that last post. And if you look, there's a bunch of Outcast logos around it. So people in the Bayou are freaking out because they don't even know if they have Zip anymore.
Oh, you're right. There are Outcast logos on the corners of it. I didn't even see that. Oh,
you know, I would say that for anyone, if this comes out while the Easter sale is still going, which I don't know, Pete, what your plan is for release.
Oh, I'm releasing this tonight, man.
Okay. So all I'll say is, if you're looking to buy models during the Easter sale, buy them without being focused on what faction they're in.
That's a
focus on the keyword models themselves, because if something moves, you can still play it. It may not be, you know, the fact, like, don't get Bass because you want to play Bass in Guild. Get Bass because you want to play Bass.
I am a little sad, though, because I feel like Clipper, I don't see any world where Clipper does not go to Hoffman. So I'm kind of sitting here looking at this giant metal bird thinking, I guess I got to play Hoffman now, I guess.
Look, one of those is the bird. One of them is the worm. They were naturally meant to not get along.
That's fair. You know, sometimes the bird gets you, sometimes the worm gets away, I guess. Okay. All right. So things let's see here. I'm going to look at that list because there was a couple other things I noticed that you were right. Bayou looks like it could be losing a lot. So that really is interesting to me because I'm thinking what is getting added. Because once again, if you're losing something, something's getting added, right? So, well, it'll be interesting to see what the Bayou decides to do with that. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting times. We're just saying that. So
Yeah.
we do have a handful of questions that I'm just going to roll through. You can answer them how you feel like answering them. But question 1 goes to Jim. Rich from Beard Mini says, Jim, how do you stay so handsome? Jim was not ready for that.
Look, it just comes natural. But no, that's very kind of you to say. But
I think it's the stash, Jim. It adds a very good aesthetic there.
yeah, I'm just prepping for my my you know, Volkov, or what was his name? The now a lawyer model
Oh, the
cosplay.
steward.
Yeah.
So here's a real question. Just looking at, and Tom asked this. Tom asked a lot of questions because I love Tom's mindset, and he's a very curious guy. He noticed the font differences and the artwork differences. How are you guys feeling about the artistic push and some of the art that's been released for some of these models too? How are you guys feeling about what we're seeing so far? Go ahead, Trevor.
Oh, okay. Me first.
You first.
Obviously, the art style for some of the photos, new sculpts, things like that. That's super cool. Very excited about that. I don't like the red for the Malifaux 4th edition. That being the staple.
Now, just so you know, they do have that logo in every faction's every faction's color. If you look at the releases,
okay,
they have one in all the different colors so far.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's how they're doing it there.
So you got your teal in there. Calm down.
Yeah, no, no. I just mean like, I guess overall, maybe it is just white. I think I miss the old font for sure. I like the old kind of, I don't know, grittier, grungier font, I suppose.
It is bold. It is a bold look.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jim? You liking the art?
About the same. It definitely is a little more, not whimsical, but it is exaggerated. I feel the art is more exaggerated than Third was. Third had an element of like gritty realism to it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense in my head. Like you looked at a character and you're like, okay, I can see that character being art in like a pseudo-realistic book, and then now we have, just look at Earl Burns and Zip, the new art for Earl Burns and Zip. That is very bold, very exaggerated in a positive way. All in a positive way.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how much of that is going to translate on the actual models. Because for, as long as I've seen Malifaux models, they've been very gritty, grimy, kind of just really in this chaotic world. They're just trying to survive type look. So I do want to keep most of that vibe, right? I don't want it to go to too cartoonish. I want it to feel more like Malifaux, not like 40K, right? 40K has a grim future, but it's very cartoonish in a lot of their sculpts. So, just avoid that a bit. What do you guys think about, and this is more for you, Jim, how do you feel about comparing this to when 2nd edition went to 3rd edition? Is it a lot of the same vibes? Are you seeing some of the same arguments? What do you notice as a player who kind of was in during that time?
2nd edition was a very different experience.
Yeah.
Partially because 2nd edition was leaked prior to it being ready to announce. So Wyrd had to rush with messaging and hadn't ironed out what their goals were. Or at least it didn't feel to me like Wyrd had adequately prepared the rollout in a way that, so they kind of had to catch up. Here it feels like they have a game plan and they're rolling it out in that game plan.
Yeah.
And they are making choices. The 2nd edition to 3rd edition changeover essentially rewrote everything all at once.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting to see what we get when open beta starts. to see if they're going to continue with that. Here are all the keywords in the game. Everyone try and balance them all at once kind of mess, or if it's going to be more organized.
Yeah, I think it would be smart if they just, piecemealed it out and kind of be like, and maybe not say this directly to the players, but if they were going, hey, we want to see how summoners feel right now. Let's go ahead and release a couple summoner keywords, see how they interact with some of the other ones. I think that would be smart of them. And I imagine that's kind of what they're probably doing with a lot of these betas anyways. So yeah, I think from what I hear about second edition transitioning to third to fourth seems a little more well thought out as opposed to reactionary a bit. So that's kind of positive in my book. So if you guys were king of the world of Malifaux, next question, what would you want to see for your favorite model or models in Malifaux? So what are you hoping? So whether it's Thierry, Lord Cooper, Jim, I don't know what you're on right now, but what's something where you're like, hey, I would love for this to happen in this fourth edition for my favorite thing? Go, Trevor.
Okay.
On the spot.
For me, on the spot, I guess I can't think of one thing in particular. Like, again, I think the reason why I'm so bent out of shape is I really love where I'm at with Explorer Society right now. I think if I was king of Malifaux, it would be a little boost for the title versions that don't get used as much. Like, I'm hoping this new totem thing, and the way that they're switching this up a little bit with the keywords is a little bit of a boost for the title versions that don't get used as much or that are just kind of wonky. Like Thierry is a great example of that. I've been playing her title a lot recently, and there's some cool things about it, but there are some things that are just kind of not that great. So I'm hoping that this will be the opportunity to do that for title versions that don't get used.
Yeah, what about you, King of Malifaux? What are you doing?
I really want to see if it's difficult, because what I want to say is crews that have really robust keywords like Swamp Fiend.
Yeah.
Clearly, one of the things in the Defective Dice video was that all the Silurid were leaving Zoraida to go Versatile Bayou. They were losing Swamp Fiend. That hurts my soul, because I like the frogs.
Yeah.
But I get it. That's one way to reduce a big keyword.
Yeah.
But
they're kind of doing the same thing with Maw, right? Where you see some models getting piecemealed out to different factions.
What I would like to see is that if keywords that are losing access to a good volume of models in their range, either through consolidation or through those models going to versatile, that they have a bit of an identity shift.
Yeah.
If Zoraida's losing Kurgan and the frogs, she's left with Bad Juju, McTavish, maybe Gators, maybe Waldgeist, and maybe the Will-O-Wisp and stuff. Or maybe she's now going more into the plant magic territory, and maybe she'd play very different. Or like Ma, she's lost the Bushwhackers and the Soulstone Miners, but maybe she's going to go lean heavier into the chicken cavalry.
And she lost the Rockhopper.
So are we getting more chicken jockeys?
Yeah.
Yeah, Minecraft movie references.
Yeah, first riders could be amazing. That would be great. Yeah, I
That's
think mine.
where I'm at.
Yeah, I think mine King of Malifaux moment. I do obviously want Maw to be Maw. I want her to feel like Maw Tucket doing tricksy things. So if I was going to say one thing for sure, though, I would actually love to see Marshall be really strong again. And this kind of goes to what Trevor was saying. I want to see things that didn't have a time in the sun in third edition. I want to see those things have a time in the sun right now. Like I want them to sing a little bit. I want them to maybe be a little bit above the because this is a reset kind of ground zero moment. Those keywords that have been traditionally struggling, I want them to be towards the top of the curve. So like Lady J, I want to be up at the top a bit. Honeypot, I want the actual keyword to function and be towards the top. So just those keywords that have been struggling a bit and seem a little clunky in third edition, I want them to be kind of honed in a little bit. I want them to run smooth and just be successful for sure.
Would I be able to pop in real quick with just one more small request? One more small request for Wyrd?
Denied. Go ahead, Trevor.
What is your question?
A linear lore book. So I don't have to find the lore by just listening to podcasts and going all over the place. It would be great if I could get some actual tomes or books of all of the lore in one place so I could read through it, because I'm a little I'm still getting used to this game and I'm still way behind in all the lore because it's a little overwhelming where it's all placed.
An omnibus?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Wyrd, give us an omnibus as the kids read all their fancy comic books and stuff.
You could even do it as a trilogy, or at least a duology at this point, because you could do the first arc, which leads up to the end of second edition, or so there's an arc where it goes from we're introduced to the Malifaux world, and we there are clear arcs that you could turn into books, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
Now, I thought this next question was a little bit of a low blow from Edic, but that's just Edic. He just says, how are you going to celebrate Levy being gone? I thought that was a little kick in the pants to Levy. Probably not fair. He's just trying to live forever, He's got a checkered past, to be polite about it, but you got Rusty. You can celebrate by playing Rusty and proxying Levy.
Yeah, that's my plan. I'm going to paint, because I won the box at Houston last year.
Oh, nice.
That was what I got off the prize bot table. So I'm going to paint him up and then play the crew when I see what it's doing.
Now, Trevor, were you ever bad touched by Levy since you got a Levy player in your group?
Yes and no. I mean, I never really felt strongly against Levy either way. Like he was a good player too. So, most of the time, even now, I still just chalk it up to me needing to learn. So,
yeah. So another good question that I just had. So with all that being said, what is going to be the first thing you want to play in the beta? That if you had an option to, and if you can't play it in the beta because they don't give you the rules, what's going to be the first keyword that you play in the new edition that you want to play? I will say, while you guys are thinking about that, I think my first one that I want to play is actually, it's got to be, even though I like Lady J, I'm still going to, if available, I will play Trixie first. That's going to be my first drop if I have a choice.
Mine will be Anya Syndicate, because it's my most practice and I want to see if it feels as good as it did.
It feels like it, right? It's like, does this feel like my keyword?
Yes, that's what I want to do.
I can't tell you. It's going to be a different answer on Monday anyway.
Jim's like, I'm going to roll the dice and just see what's in the bag.
Yeah, I'm still looking at trying to work through my... I was going to say Misaki, because I was going to work on those Ban Ying and stuff. But now that I know she's lost at least Jin, I'm like, I can't do the hold till... I can't pass token cheese to get last attack with the ninja lady, so do I even want to do that?
Yeah.
But
okay. Jim's undecided. He's going to bounce around a couple times before that actually matters. So another question that I got, this is kind of more specifically for me. It says, from Edict, are you planning on some form of play testing with people in the Discord? I'm probably going to offer that up to patrons first, just because I always prioritize if they want a game. So I am planning on doing a lot of the beta stuff. So I will be looking for games, and I do that pretty much exclusively through Patreon and the Discord. So yeah, if you're interested in that and I got the time, I'm definitely down for some beta testing. Beta. We already went over the no damage flips thing. We're kind of waiting to see how that's going to really make us feel once we get all the different parts of it. Let's see here. There's 2 more questions, and then I got Dixon gave some feedback that I want your guys' feedback on, and then we'll be done here. So with some of the buried models and crews, how do you envision them, Jim, playing now that they don't bury? So Terra specifically, Marshall, and then the random models. Like, I think the Calypso one's probably, you can figure out some easy fix there. But really, people that bury a lot, how do you envision that kind of working now? I'm envisioning a lot of places, maybe, quick movement.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're going to see more stuff like the rewind mechanic that we had with Terra Timeless.
Yeah.
And probably some kind of fast and slow emphasis. So like using fast on your own models or giving out slow as opposed to teleporting. And then for the marshals, I don't know.
I think you got to lean against that undead kind of thing where we're going to be the super undead faction making you undead with maybe coffins and stuff.
I could see.
Yeah, I think you got to lean into that other part of it.
I could see another condition, something like locked down, or
That'd be cool.
Or maybe the keyword, like part of their ability being able to hit something that's buried. Maybe it's called chain shot, where as long as that model is base to base, then you can shoot through it. That kind of deal. Something.
Yeah.
Of that
What
nature.
what do you think about this, Trevor? So I don't know if you played against Raspy 2, but she has an action that she basically chains you to an ice pillar and you can't move until that ice pillar is removed. So maybe Lady J can do the same thing, but with a coffin to be like, unless this coffin's removed, you're stuck in this area.
Right. Yeah, that could absolutely be like they cannot, they're locked down to that marker, to the coffin marker or to, maybe
Yeah, so
something
unless the
along those
coffin's
lines.
removed, you're stuck next to the coffin.
Yep, or it's a void marker,
Yeah, something.
and as long as they're touching the void marker, they can be shot through other void markers.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's some cool design space for sure. Let's see here. Last question before Dixon's comments. So looking at getting soul stones when things die, do you guys think with summoners they're going to make it where summon models don't give you soul stones when they die? To try and balance that out, maybe.
I mean, that makes sense to me, that you wouldn't be able to perpetual motion engine summons.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. Maybe some will, some won't. Like, I don't think Hamlin, as he currently is, could not function if he could print
Getting a
rats.
crap ton of rats, blowing them up, and getting like 10 soul stones, you don't think that's
Right.
fair?
No. and maybe part of the balance is that summons don't do that, or
Yeah, maybe.
maybe. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think Rapidash, who astutely noticed that would be very good in the current iteration of the game. So I do think there has to be a balancing point there for sure.
Or, hopefully weird willing summoners don't exist anymore. I'm just
Wow.
That
Trevor
would-
really hates summoners.
I don't like summoners, though.
to be
But I
fair-
play against them a lot, and I don't really get to summon much myself. So
that does contribute to longer games, and I can see that being a big change. We'll see. I feel like there are enough summoning as an identity to the game that would be a real big change.
yes, it would. They would be sad.
So if they were going to move, and obviously I'm not saying this, folks, so don't take this as Pete all of a sudden is telling you how it's going to be. But there is a precedent for that a bit, where if you look at the Pigapult in M3E, you get 2 stuffed piglets when you hire it. So if you brought a summoner, but you didn't want to deal with summoning anymore, which once again, I don't think they're going to do, but you could do it where it's like, hey, you bring the Forgotten Marshal, you get, a Kruligan for free or something. But I think with the changes to how they're doing summons off of the errated keywords from late edition in 3, we're probably going to see it cleaned up. There's probably going to be less efficiency when it comes to the models hitting the table. Maybe a lower cap, so maybe you can't summon 5, maybe you can only summon 3. Something along those lines I think is probably more fair. But we'll see, for sure. So last thing before we get out of here, Dixon, he said, and I got to ask him what he means by this. So Dixon actually thought that the token stuff felt weird and kind of clunky and bad. So he said it seemed backwards to him, but he hopes he's wrong about that. So I think he doesn't like the check yes, check no mentality of it. Kind of like what you were saying for shielded, right? That it just seems like, oh, you got shot once. Okay, your shield's gone. You can't stack it. So yeah, that feels bad. And then he also said that damage looks good in his opinion. So he's actually damage, who Dixon is a very damage-centric player. He thought the damage actually looked pretty good. So the token thing, I can get some aspects of it. It might not work as well as we want it to, especially when you look at, okay, how much damage are you taking from burning or poison? And are you going to be able to really leverage that as a condition player? Or is that just kind of the way of the dinosaurs, and condition damage isn't really, it's more of a resource than it is damage? I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, specifically to things like shielded as a resource for Tiri, I could see them giving her something more like Hoffman's power tokens to reflect the curse of Sharuf, because that's that was one of the big things. I think Liam was ranting about that before.
Yeah.
About, the whole curse of Sharuf is that their bones are slowly burning, and that they have these arcane shields to try and keep them from burning alive. That's what shielded represents, but in the game, we've also seen shielded used to represent force fields and electricity and other similar kinds of things, so they could be more specific and still do something like, okay, Tiri's now giving power out to these this ancient Alwyn technology. Oh no.
But would that still only be one? It would still only be, like, if they don't stack anymore, are we also not going to be able to stack focus?
Correct. I mean,
one focus?
All conditions are now tokens. And I mean, we don't know if focus is going to simply be you get a plus flip on your duel because there's no damage flips now. But maybe focus is a +1 raise, like default. Like maybe if you focus, you just get a flat +1 to your raise value.
Yeah, I could see that.
I can also see them just saying, okay, in Tiri's crew, you just get armor on everything to make up for the damage mitigation.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'm really curious to see how this all shakes out. Definitely, I'm going to be looking at recaps over the next, probably after 5 days or so. This is Holy Week, so I'm actually going to be severely out of touch and not checking things up until after Easter Sunday. So that's the reason why we're recording this, because I'm going to be out of town and traveling and enjoying that festive time of this year, this glorious time of this year. So definitely be checking out the Discord for Rage Quit Wire, though, because all of my friends there and all of our people in the community will be updating people on these new changes. And hopefully by the time I come back to Malifaux on Monday, I will be enjoying some beta stuff to look at. Jim, you've been really great in the Discord. I know you've enjoyed talking back and forth with it. Trevor, I know that you get a little bit of your panic attack going on there, but I think generally you've been enjoying a lot of the interaction of the community because this is new for you. I think it's really cool to see you engaging in your kind of first edition change in a game. So that's been fun.
Yeah, it has been like overall it has been good, and everybody is trying to pump each other up because we all do love this game.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? Jim, you've been enjoying it so far. Not the worst edition change you ever seen?
I think we have seen a lot more discourse around the game this week that has been, I think, ultimately productive.
Yeah.
I think it's still too early until we see the draft rules. I'm trying to slow my roll on things.
Yeah.
I definitely am raising my eyebrows about a few things. I'm optimistic, but I acknowledge that I have historically been a bit of a look on the bright side and maybe brush some of. I'm the guy who said we need to wait a little bit longer on the Damian nerfs. So, I know I can not see I can see. I don't know what the word I'm trying to say is.
You can be too optimistic sometimes.
Yeah, that's it.
And I've been trying to stay mostly optimistic. I do see some potential problems. So I don't want people to think that I'm just, a Malifaux homer, which I am. I'm not going to pretend like I don't love this game. But I try to see where Wyrd is going with it. And until I see the full picture, I'm going to think that they're acting in, they're acting in good faith, right? They're trying to make the best decision for the games. They're trying to do it for all scales of players, not just hyper competitive or not just new players. So I have faith that they're going to make the game interesting enough where we still love it. It's going to keep the flavor, which we all love about Malifaux, but it's going to let more people enjoy the game, which is the big thing, right? I want to see the game grow. I don't want to see it just be a hyper competitive community that it's hard for new players to crack. So that's kind of the big thing for me.
I definitely see that.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming on. And please look on the Discord for Trevor and Jim to walk through the next few days here while I'm, doing my thing. And real quick, Jim, any plugs?
I just wanted to say thank you for having me on. Please, we talked I name dropped the Defective Dice video, but Danger Planet also has dropped a video, and Steam Powered Scoundrels are due to have a episode out.
I think Friday, right? Good Friday. They're dropping something.
Mm-hmm. So I think, please, if you're listening to this, show some love to the other content creators out there who are getting an opportunity to share some of this with us, and show Wyrd some love by, taking advantage of this Easter sale, and remember to use the Rage Quit Wire discount code at checkout.
Yeah, and definitely with that, there's still a lot of good stuff you can buy even if you're waiting for the new boxes to be released. Like that 8th mate model looks sick. Trevor, what about you? You plugging anything going on in the Rocky Mountain area?
Oh, we're still rolling along. We've got a summer tournament coming up here June 7th, which we'll still be running 3E for that tournament. We're going to do a GG All, which will be pretty fun.
Almost like a send-off Malifaux.
Yeah, that's kind of how we've been treating it, is a send-off for 3E, and we're looking forward to doing some beta testing here locally as well when they release everything. So
nice. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on, and until next time, which will probably be very soon, probably sometime shortly after the beta starts, we will be putting out content for what we think about that and what we think about all these new rules Wyrd is sharing with us. So until then, make sure that you guys are flipping cards and flipping tables, and we will see you all later.